There is a widespread belief in modern culture that when a man enters his 60s or 70s and chooses to live simply, it means he settled for less. People look at a senior man who turns down expensive lifestyle upgrades, lives in a modest home he paid off decades ago, and prefers a quiet afternoon over a noisy venue, and they secretly assume his ambition died along the way. They look at his unpretentious clothes, his modest lifestyle, and his refusal to chase the next big trend, and they mistake his silence for a lack of success. They assume that if he truly had money, he'd be showing it off. They couldn't be more wrong. What the world mistakes for a lack of ambition is actually the ultimate form of financial victory. When a wise senior man steps away from the endless cycle of striving, flexing, and spending, it isn't because he ran out of options or lost his drive. It is because he finally saw through the illusion and realized that the only way to win a game designed to drain your peace is to stop playing it altogether. His choices aren't born of weakness, fear, or age. They are forged from decades of trial and error, hard-won discipline, and absolute clarity about what truly matters. He doesn't keep a low profile because he has less to show. He keeps a low profile because he no longer needs the applause of strangers to validate his self-worth. He has learned that real wealth isn't about how much you can display to the world, it's about how little the world can disturb your peace of mind. Have you ever wondered why the most financially secure, deeply grounded senior men seem to live the quietest lives? What does their daily routine actually look like when money is no longer a scoreboard for their ego, but a shield for their tranquility? Today, let's look closely at the daily habits and inner philosophy of senior men who have mastered financial discipline, not to accumulate more things, but to buy back their freedom, protect their peace, and leave a legacy that truly lasts. If you were to look at the daily routine of a financially disciplined senior man, you wouldn't find a frantic schedule or a checklist designed to impress anyone. His morning doesn't start with the panic of checking stock market fluctuations or rushing off to defend an image. It begins with something far more valuable: silence. He wakes up knowing his home is paid for, his debts are zero, and his overhead is low. This isn't an accident, it is a design. Centuries ago, the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote in his letters to Lucilius, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Seneca wasn't praising poverty. He was warning us against the endless hunger of the unexamined life. A wise senior man understands this deeply. He has spent decades watching men with high incomes live on the brink of financial collapse because their expenses always rose to meet their ego. In modern behavioral science, psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, the psychological tendency for humans to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive life changes or financial gains. When a younger man buys a luxury vehicle, the high lasts a few weeks before it becomes the new baseline, requiring yet another purchase to feel that same surge of validation. The disciplined senior man has stepped off that treadmill. He realizes that every unnecessary luxury carries an invisible price tag, not just in dollars, but in mental bandwidth, maintenance, insurance, and worry. By choosing simplicity, he frees his mind from ego depletion, preserving his decision-making energy for the things that actually enrich his life: his health, his quiet hobbies, his family, and his inner stability. Real wealth begins where the need to impress ends. Consider a scenario that plays out in neighborhoods across the country every single day. A man in his late 60s watches his younger neighbor pull up in a brand new $60,000 luxury SUV. The paint is gleaming, the engine purrs, and for a brief second, the culture tells us that the man in the SUV is winning. But the senior man sitting on his porch, holding a simple mug of black coffee, knows the rest of the story. He knows about the 6-year loan, the high monthly payments, the inflated insurance premiums, and the quiet anxiety that comes with tying up future freedom in a rapidly depreciating asset. The senior man's car in the driveway might be 8 years old. It is paid off, spotlessly maintained, and completely reliable. To an outsider, the neighbor looks richer. But on a balance sheet, and in terms of mental peace, the senior man is light years ahead. A quiet bank account is often stronger than a loud lifestyle. This discipline extends into the afternoon. particularly in how a wise senior man manages his relationships and financial boundaries. One of the hardest lessons a man faces in his later years is learning how to protect his retirement nest egg from emotional pressure. It is entirely natural to want to help the people we love, our adult children, our siblings, or extended family, but a disciplined senior man knows the vital difference between helping someone stand on their own 2 feet and enabling financial irresponsibility. He has learned to say no without offering a lengthy defense or feeling a shred of guilt. When an adult child asks for a loan to fund a speculative business venture or requests that he co-sign a loan for a house they cannot afford, the disciplined senior man pauses. He doesn't make decisions out of fear, anger, or a desire to be liked. He understands the concept in behavioral finance known as loss aversion, the principle that the pain of losing something is psychologically twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining it. At 65 or 70, a man does not have another 30 years of earning potential to recover from a bad financial mistake. Protecting his retirement income isn't selfish. It is his primary duty to himself and his spouse, so he never becomes a financial burden on his family later in life. The wisest senior men protect their peace before they protect their pride. When he chooses not to co-sign that loan, or when he decides to keep the exact size of his savings entirely private, he isn't being cold. He is practicing Stoic boundaries. Epictetus famously taught that we cannot control the opinions or expectations of others. We can only control our own actions and responses. The senior man who has mastered his finances knows that keeping his money quiet prevents unnecessary family drama, avoids financial arguments, and preserves genuine love based on connection rather than financial expectation. As the day moves forward, you will often find a disciplined senior man engaged in a process that looks physical on the surface but is deeply spiritual underneath, downsizing and decluttering. In our younger years, we collect possessions like trophies. We fill large houses with furniture, equipment, gadgets, and collections, believing that these things reflect our identity and our success. But as a man matures, his relationship with possessions undergoes a profound shift. He looks around his home and recognizes the endowment effect, our psychological tendency to overvalue things simply because we own them. He begins to see that every object sitting in an attic, a basement, or a dusty garage represents a tiny piece of his attention. It requires cleaning, organizing, insuring, and storing. So, he begins to let go. He sells the boat that sits in the driveway 11 months out of the year. He downsizes to a home that requires 20 minutes of care, rather than a full weekend of chores. He gives away tools he no longer uses to younger men who can actually benefit from them. Downsizing with dignity is not about giving up. It is about lightening the load for the final leg of the journey. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal Meditations, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." When a senior man releases the need for excess stuff, he isn't losing anything of real value. He is gaining space. He is gaining time. He is gaining the freedom to wake up and decide how he wants to spend his day, without being anchored to the maintenance of a large estate. He realizes that money is a tool, but freedom is the ultimate goal. Research from organizations like the ARP and Federal Reserve surveys on consumer finances consistently highlight a striking trend. The happiest retirees are not those with the highest gross income, but those with the lowest fixed monthly overhead and the highest degree of autonomy over their time. This aligns perfectly with self-determination theory in modern psychology, which proves that human well-being relies far more on autonomy, competence, and connection than on external rewards or status symbols. When a man controls his expenses, he controls his time, and when he controls his time, he owns his life. In the evening, the routine of a financially disciplined senior man turns naturally toward legacy. Notice that he does not view legacy as a pile of money left in a bank account for relatives to fight over. To him, legacy is the character, wisdom, and financial emotional intelligence he passes down to the next generation. When he spends time with his grandchildren, he doesn't rain expensive gifts on them to buy their affection or show off his success. Instead, he gives them his uninterrupted presence. He teaches them how to build things, how to save their first dollars, how to think long-term, and how to value character over appearances. He teaches them wisdom instead of entitlement. He isn't afraid of losing money because he spent decades learning that true security comes from internal competence, not external balance sheets. He refuses to become controlled by money, whether through the greed of wanting more or the fear of losing what he has. The richest senior men rarely feel the need to prove they are rich. They walk through the world with a quiet confidence. They don't engage in loud debates about politics or wealth. They step away from unnecessary conflict. They spend intentionally on experiences that bring genuine joy: a trip to see lifelong friends, quality food, good books, a comfortable pair of walking shoes, or supporting a cause they quietly believe in. A peaceful life is, after all, the greatest return on investment. Growing older is not a process of fading away or becoming weaker. For the disciplined man, it is the ultimate refinement. It is the stage of life where you shed the noisy expectations of the world and settle comfortably into who you truly are. It is about becoming wiser, more patient, financially independent, emotionally resilient, and entirely difficult to manipulate. It is about reaching that rare and beautiful state of mind where you are deeply comfortable with enough, rich in character, and focused on legacy instead of public recognition. True wealth is never measured by the car in the driveway, the size of the house, or the brand on a wristwatch. It is measured by the stillness of your mind when you lay your head down at night. It is measured by your self-control, your freedom, your gratitude, and the strength of the relationships you have nurtured along the way. As Seneca so elegantly reminded us thousands of years ago, life is long enough if you know how to use it. And there is no better way to use the precious years of retirement than to invest every single day in peace rather than prestige. I'd like to hear from you today. What is the greatest money lesson that life has taught you over the years? Is there a financial habit or a boundary that completely transformed your peace of mind in retirement? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your wisdom might be exactly what a younger man needs to read today. If this message brought you clarity or peace, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with another senior man who values wisdom over status. Seek wisdom, protect your peace, leave a legacy,